Welcome back with a smiley face. A link of previous episodes is provided into the description of the video. You can also join us on Patreon to listen more unlimited audiobooks like this. You can also visit and shop our ebooks. His Revenge to Restitution. Episode 11. Last episode. Chapter 74 to 78. Missy. Maddox was barely hanging on, and I could feel our bond starting to shred. This was worse than thinking he was dead. He was dying right before my eyes. I moved as carefully but quickly as I could. I knew what direction Liam and Lee went but didn't know exactly where. I used my nose, desperately searching for their scents. Lee was the only thing that could save Maddox, and I knew it. Finally, I caught their scent and headed toward them. I could hear fighting, and I grew worried as we got closer. There was a squishing thud sound before they finally came into view. Liam was rushing to Lee, who was on the ground. I stopped a few yards away and carefully got Maddox onto the ground. I shifted back to check on him. Maddox, please, hang on. I found her, okay? I found Lee, and she'll fix you, I told him. He coughed weakly, and I looked up to my parents quickly. Warwick wasn't here. The vampire smell lingered, but it wasn't as strong as it should be. Maddox, they did it. They stopped him, I said quickly. It'll all be all right now. You just have to stay with me, okay? Don't close your eyes. A wolf came over and gently set Maddox's severed arm down next to me, right where it would be lying if it were attached to his body. The two wolves that had followed me here stepped back. I looked over at Liam and Lee, ready to call out and tell them I needed help but stopped quickly. Something was happening. Lee was still in Liam's arms, but her body was at a weird angle, and a pink light was erupting from her. Liam was screaming her name as he held her, and my stomach filled with trepidation. The sky around us seemed to glow with the same pink hue fueled by the moon's light. Light shed from the sky, leaving warmth in its path. Maddox made a soft grunt behind me, and I turned back to him, panicking. His face was screwed up in concentration, but I quickly realized his color was returning to normal. I gasped as I looked down at his injured extremity. It was magic because slowly, his skin was knitting back together. His arm glowed slightly pink as his body healed. As it happened, I felt our bond repairing and strengthening. Within only moments, his arm was wholly reattached, and Maddox let out a heavy breath. His eyes opened and found me. Missy, he whispered. Maddox. I stammered. He pushed himself into a sitting position, and I watched him in disbelief. What? I'm okay, he said softly. I shook my head. How? I started to ask. I realized immediately I didn't care how. I launched myself at him, and he caught me in his embrace. It's over, he whispered into my hair. You scared me half to death, Maddox. I thought I was losing you. I cried. He squeezed me even tighter. Never, Missy. I just won't let that happen, he promised. Reluctantly, he pulled away. Is everyone else okay? I don't know, I told him. I brought you to my mom to heal you, and then, I trailed off, pointing up at the pink sky. He looked up first, then behind me to Liam and Lee. Come on, he said gently, pushing me up to my feet. Felix. I held my small son in my hands, not believing this was happening. Lacey, stay awake, I told her. She hummed softly as Miss Marcy tried to help her. So many things were going through my head. I looked down at the tiny bundle of blankets in my hands. My son was here, Lacey had brought our pup into the world. But she wouldn't stop bleeding, and I had no idea what to do. "We really need a doctor," Miss Marcy said quietly. "Just keep her alive," I growled. She turned to me with a serious look, and I softened a bit. "I know this is scary for you, Felix, but I am trying to help Lacey." "Do not order me around," she snapped. "Sorry," I sighed. She nodded her head and went back to my mate. "Get closer to her. Help her hold the pup. Maybe her body will heal, and we can fight this a little longer," she instructed. I nodded and moved over beside my mate's head. Her forehead was covered in sweat, and her eyes were half closed. "Lacey," I whispered. I adjusted our pup over her chest, grabbing her arm to wrap around him. "You did it. He's perfect. Stay with us, okay?" Her eyelids fluttered slightly. I kept one hand on our son, making sure he stayed supported on her. I used my other hand to push away the loose hair clinging to her face. "Please open your eyes," I begged her. The door to the safe room opened, and silence settled around us. I tore my eyes away from Lacey to find Sean coming toward me. "Felix, I am sorry, but I need your help," he started quickly. "Unless you have a doctor behind you, get out," I growled. "Felix, Lily, Quinn, and Michael brought." I roared loudly at him, and he shrunk back. I held no position of leadership in this pack. I was only in charge of Luna's safety. Right now, my mate was bleeding uncontrollably on the floor of our safe room. I did not give a st about what Quinn and Lily were doing. "Look," someone said. A pink glow filled the hallway. As it did, the light started to illuminate the safe room. I looked around, confused as warmth started to permeate my skin. "What is happening?" Sean asked, looking around us. I felt a soft hand at my wrist, and my attention snapped back to my mate. "Felix," Lacey said softly. Her eyes were open and clear again. Her hand rested on mine that held our pup to her. "She stopped bleeding," Miss Marcy exclaimed. "Felix, I'm okay," she repeated. "Lacey," I gasped. She nodded her head before her eyes wandered down to our pup. "He's beautiful," she whispered. Her hands came up to support him as she marveled at the little life we created. "Felix, your son is here," she smiled up at me. "Damien." I breathed heavily as Axel stood next to me, doing the same in wolf form. We managed to take out one of the legs of this behemoth, but the only thing it seemed to do was root him to the spot. He stood sturdy on one leg, his balance unfazed. What had Warwick created? Every part of my body screamed in agony, but I knew it wasn't an option to quit. This thing could not get near the pack house. Axel's team had finished off the rest of the vampires that joined this monster when it first appeared. A few were injured and trying to recover while the others paced around us, waiting for the order to strike from Axel. Every time we got near enough to this thing to strike it, it swung at us. Even when we attacked at the same time, it managed to push us away. Nothing we had done since we caught its leg was working. "What do we do?" Axel asked. I was at just as much of a loss as him, but we couldn't do nothing. "Maybe we need to attack with more of us," I answered him. I was worried that if we took much longer, Warwick's creation would somehow begin regrowing its leg. Before Axel and I could formulate any more of a plan, the monstrous vampire in front of us dropped his head forward then fell to the ground. We jumped back as his body made an echoing crash as it hit the ground. Axel and I looked at each other before looking to the body of our enemy again. Suddenly, he began to crumble away, leaving a pile of dust and a few bones and teeth in his place. What just happened? Axel asked me. I think we won, I said, letting out a heavy breath. I fell back, landing on my A*S. Axel shifted back. Does this mean they stopped the sire? He asked. I think so, I said. I stared at the pile in front of me in disbelief. Was it really over? My other axe was discarded near the remains. What do we do now? He asked. I looked up at him. The enemy may be defeated, but it wasn't over just yet, and we both knew it. I need to get to Liam and Aelia. Take your guys back to the pack house. Get your injured help or shelter and tell them what happened. I need to make sure our Alpha and Luna are all right, I told him, my mind easily switching right back into beta mode. Right, Axel said. He looked over his shoulder, but his team didn't seem to need more direction, having already heard me. He held out a hand to help me up. Need a hand? I grabbed it and, with enormous effort, got to my feet. I was going to need a lot of recovery time after all of this. I lumbered over to my second axe and retrieved it from the ground. Are you sure you're okay to find Alpha and Luna? Axel asked. I didn't get to answer him because all of a sudden, a pink light invaded the sky. The moon's light only made it brighter. Something rained down over us. It left warmth dancing over my skin. This warmth, this light, it's familiar. I thought. I closed my eyes as I felt it sink into my body. Slowly, all my pain eased, and I could feel my muscles relaxing. My skin closed around my cuts, and my bruised skin faded. Aelia, somehow she was healing us. I looked around to see everyone else recovering in a similar manner. No one understood what was going on, but I did. Aelia was a harvest moon wolf. Lily. The witch magicked some clothes for Quinn and I, but Michael opted to shift. We knew we needed to take her back to the pack house because she wouldn't be safe just sitting here. After a little convincing, we managed to get her on Michael's back, and we set off to the pack house. Quinn and I were able to jog to make the trip faster. We were about halfway to the pack house when I started feeling pain. I stumbled a bit, feeling like the wind was knocked out of me. Quinn and Michael stopped. Lily, are you okay? Quinn asked. Damien, I gasped. Something is wrong. I clutched my chest, scared for my mate. Michael, we need to hurry, Quinn said, grabbing my arm. She pulled me with her, leading me back to the pack house. Let's get this witch to safety, then we can find your mate, she told me. I nodded, trying to ignore the pain. When we got to the pack house, Sean ran out to meet us. Lily, where have you been? Who is that? He looked at the woman on Michael's back. I don't have time to explain everything. I need you to take her to safety so I can go help Damien, I said quickly. Quinn helped the girl down. Sean made a disgusted face. She isn't one of us, and she may not be a vampire, but she smells like one, he sneered. We can't allow her safety here. Sean, just do it. I argued with him. No, he argued back. I will not risk the lives of everyone in this pack house for this one person. She is clearly in league with them. She was a hostage and has agreed to cooperate with us, I gritted out. Just keep her safe until I get back. I'll stay with her, Quinn butted in. Sean threw his hands up in frustration. I know this is not my pack, and you are not my warrior, but allow me to watch her. I will make sure she does nothing to hurt your pack members. You answer for this if anything goes wrong, and I am informing Felix, Sean said, narrowing his eyes at me. Fine. I said. I pushed past him and led Quinn, Michael, and the witch toward the pack house. Put her in someone's office. Don't go near the safe room with that woman. Sean yelled after us. I sighed. We can go to Damien's office, I said as we got inside. Michael straggled behind us as he shifted and pulled on a pair of shorts. You shouldn't be upset with them, Quinn commented. He is simply doing his job. I rolled my eyes, but the witch piped in. I am the enemy technically, she said. When we got upstairs, I settled her in a chair and turned to Quinn. Are you sure about this? I asked. The longer this took, the more I could feel Damien's injuries. Michael will go with you to find him, Quinn said. She gave a pitying look to the witch. I have it handled here. I looked at Michael, who nodded. Thank you, Luna. Really? I told her. When I opened the door, there was a commotion coming from down the hall. I looked into the hallway cautiously to see people rushing around. Turning back to Quinn, I noticed a pink glow in the sky outside the window. What is that? I whispered, going over to the window. I threw it open only to be met with a strange pink light. Everything felt warm as the light invaded the room. Suddenly, warmth was spreading through my body. The aches and minor wounds from our fights were disappearing. Lee, is that you? I whispered. I whirled around, looking at the witch. She looked healthy again, her face rosy and skin no longer sallow. Quinn and Michael were looking down at their own bodies. Q, whatever this is, it's better than your tea, Michael said, opening and closing his fists. He looked up at her with a smirk. Quinn puffed her cheeks out and pouted at him. Michael laughed and looked at me. Do you know what's going on? He asked. I think this is Aelia, I said. I didn't know how it could be possible, but I knew my best friend had figured out how to save her whole pack. Chapter 75. Liam. Aelia's body was arched uncomfortably in my arms. She was warm all over, and this pink glow seemed to be bursting from her. Aelia! I yelled. I grabbed her face, trying to get her eyes to focus on me. Aelia! I had no idea what was happening. I just got to her. She survived everything Warwick did, she was so brave when I couldn't get to her. A tender warmth invaded me as I tried to snap her out of this. I paused, realizing it was her power. Every cut on my skin closed, every crack in my bones healed, every ache seeped away. I looked up at the moon bathed in the same pink coming from my mate. I held my breath as the warmth completed its journey, and I felt whole again. Aelia slowly relaxed in my arms, her body going limp. I realized her nose was no longer swollen, and her cuts and bruises had also disappeared. She was whole again. I waited for her to open her eyes, but she didn't move. No! Gavin screamed. I shook her. Aelia! Aelia! I called out desperately. She wasn't responding. I leaned down, kissing her lips again. The sparks were still there, she hadn't left me yet. Aelia, open your eyes. Don't leave me. Just open your eyes, baby. I pulled away from her, watching in horror. Air filled my lungs when I saw her eyelids gently blink open. Liam, she said, finding me. You're okay. I said quickly. Thank goddess, you're okay. I pulled her closer to me, wrapping her tightly in my arms. I would never take her for granted again. Liam, what happened? She asked softly. I loosened my grip, looking at her face once more. I don't know, I told her. She looked up as I spoke, all of a sudden, it was like this pink energy was bursting from you. The whole sky turned pink. And you healed me. She was quiet for a minute. That's what it looks like, she said softly. I was confused about what she meant. Her eyes came back to mine. In my head, I picture my power, and that's what it looks like. I looked at her in amazement. She reached up and cupped my face. It's over, she said softly. I nodded my head. It's really over. I'm sorry he hurt you, I apologized, ashamed as my eyes fell to the new marking below mine. I hated it, her power healed everything except that. He marked her permanently, and she would always live with a reminder of my failure. Dad! Mom! I heard Missy shout. She and Maddox were coming toward us. Missy? Maddox! Aelia said, turning in my arms. Warriors were behind them in wolf form. They both looked completely okay other than being covered in dirt. How did you do that? Missy asked, breaking away from Maddox to hug Aelia. I'm not sure, she answered. Are you both all right then? Missy nodded enthusiastically. You saved Maddox. Damien accidentally cut his arm off when they were fighting the monster, and I got him here to you for help. You did it, though. You put it right back on his body. I looked at Maddox, who nodded then back at Aelia. Her mouth opened and closed, lost for words. She had never done anything like this with her power. We need to get back to the pack house. With the vampires gone, we need to make sure everyone is all right, I told them. Patrols have already begun canvassing the pack land as they return the pack house, Azran said, coming from behind us. I stood, pulling Aelia to her feet with me before turning to him. I held out my hand. Thank you for defending your Luna as long as you could, I said. He shook my hand. It is an honor to protect her, Alpha, he returned. Are you all right, Azran? Aelia asked beside me. He smiled at her. Yes, Luna, thanks to you, he told her. I think you may have healed the whole pack from what I am being told. What? She said, looking up at me. I looked up into the sky. The bright moon glowed pink over us. Let's return, I said. We should check in with everybody as soon as possible. Can you all shift? Missy, Maddox, and Azran nodded. Aelia stepped away from me, giving me space to shift. I let Gavin have control for the time being, allowing him a moment to be close to our mate again. Once I was shifted, Aelia came over and ran her hand down our muzzle affectionately. I think she knew Gavin was in control as she bent down and placed a soft kiss on our nose. You were amazing, she whispered with a smile. Gavin gave her an affectionate growl as he rubbed his face on hers. He laid down, allowing her to climb on top of him before standing to full height. We looked around at the others, who all looked ready to run. Let's move. When we broke through the trees, I could see people gathering on the pack house lawn. To my chagrin, there was a small line starting to one side of bodies being covered in white sheets. Azalea's hands tightened on my fur when she saw. When we were close enough, I stopped and laid down to let Aelia climb off of me. I shifted, and Sean came running toward us with clothes. How many? I asked as I pulled on the shorts. 10 so far, he said solemnly. Austin is among them. I nodded. All right. Has my mother arrived yet? I asked. Sean shook his head. Can we send someone over to retrieve her? She may not know yet. Yes, sir, he said. You should speak with Damien and Michael. We have a witch here. A witch? Aelia asked, looking confused. Yes, Luna, he answered. Lily brought her before the pink light came. Let's continue the search for any injured or dead, and I need my mother checked on, I told him. Sean nodded and left us. Mommy, we heard a scream. From the back door of the pack house, Leo and Junior came sprinting at us. Aelia bent down, catching both of them in her arms. You're okay, she sobbed quietly as she clutched them tightly. I kneeled down next to them, hugging all of them together. Missy rushed over to join our family embrace, and we all sat just like that on the lawn for a long moment. Gavin was content, our pups were safe, and our mate was safe. Footsteps approached us, and I looked up to see Damien and Lily. Delilah was on her father's back, and Lily was carrying Leo. Damien held Isley. When Aelia realized, she untangled herself from us. My baby, she smiled. Damien gave her our daughter, and Aelia clutched her tightly. Maddox came over to Damien and shook his hand. A silent conversation passed between them, probably about whatever events led them to Damien cutting off Maddox's arm. I stood next to Aelia, smiling down at our littlest pup. She returned our looks of affection with an innocent smile. Her eyes were bright and clear, just like my mate's. I looked up at Damien and Lily. Which? I asked. A booming laugh answered my question. We had a hand in that, Alpha Michael answered as he and Quinn joined us. They held hands and looked completely fine. She was hiding during the attack, Lily said. We convinced her to release all the magic Warwick had her casting in exchange for our protection, Quinn explained. Quinn and I will help her to return from wherever she came from, Michael assured. She won't be an issue. I nodded my head, happy to let Michael and Quinn handle that. Felix and Lacey approached us. Lacey was smiling down at the bundle of blankets in her arm. I poked Aelia and pointed to them. Lily turned as well. Oh, my goddess! Aelia squealed. I took Isley from her so she could be appropriately excited. She, Missy, Quinn, and Lily crowded Lacey. Felix started to growl at them, but Damien grabbed him. Just give the girls a minute, he laughed. It'll pass. I laughed as well, knowing that protective instinct all too well. Congrats, I said, offering my hand to Felix. Thank you, he said quietly, shaking it. Did you pick a name? Maddox asked. Felix actually smiled. Calyx Stone, he told us. The kids joined the girls, and Lacey knelt down to show them the newest addition to our pack. Lacey almost died, Felix said, looking at me more seriously. Did Aelia really heal everyone? Damien asked quietly. I nodded. I think she did, I told them. Maybe you should start looking for a new job, Felix, Azran, Damien laughed. He looked at me, and I just gave him a deadpan look. Everyone else started to laugh as well. We alphas can take protecting our Lunas a little too seriously sometimes, Michael defended. Azran snorted. Alpha Michael, Blood Eclipse owes you a debt of gratitude. You and your Luna helped us in a time of great need, and we will always be thankful, I told him. Don't worry about it. I knew during the summit you held that you were a man worth allying with. Quinn and I were happy to help, Michael said. Thank you for helping Lily, Damien said. The girls weren't doing too bad themselves when I showed up, Michael told him. Damien nodded. Alpha. Jacob called as he jogged over to us. Alpha, Beta, there is something I need to show you. Can it wait a moment? I asked. Jacob shook his head. No, I think you both should come now. I looked at Damien, who nodded. I'll be right back, little Luna, I linked as Aelia. Michael took Asley from me so I could go handle Alpha business. Junior. Miss Lacey's little baby was cute, but not as cute as Asley, probably because Asley is a girl. What's his name? Leo asked. Calyx, Miss Lacey told him. He looks like you, Missy told Miss Lacey. That made her smile bigger. Missy stood up and looked around. Wait a minute, where is Vlad? She asked. Aunt Lily shook her head. I never saw him, she said. Vlad? Asked Mommy. Yet, Maddox and I got him out of the cells. We didn't want them to come looking for him, Missy explained. I swallowed the spit in my throat. He was supposed to get the kids to the pack house for us, so we could come help you. Mommy looked down at me, and Delilah pulled on my shirt. We'll find him, Mommy told her. I want to thank him. We wouldn't have gotten to you in time to help. He kept them safe, Missy said, looking at me too. She turned around and went to Maddox. Mommy was still looking at me, so I waved my hand to tell her I had a secret. What's going on, sweetheart? Mommy asked, coming down to me. I put my hands around her ear. Vlad died, I whispered. He stopped the vampires from getting us. Mommy looked at me with sad eyes. She nodded her head, then ruffled my hair. Thank you for telling me. I will tell your sister, she said. You don't have to worry about it now. I shook my head. No. I told her. Mommy tilted her head. Grandma said I am the little alpha. Alphas have to give bad news sometimes. It's my job, and I will tell Sissy. I waited for Mommy to say something. Finally, she smiled a little. She pulled me in for a big hug. You are very brave, my little alpha. She let me go and nodded her head to Missy. I took a deep breath and walked to my sister. Missy. I said, trying to stand up tall like Dad did. What's up, little Elle? She asked. I have something important to tell you, I said. I remembered Dad usually tells people stuff in his office and makes them sit in a chair. Maybe that was to make them take the news better. I looked around quickly, but there was nothing to sit on. Maybe we should sit down. She and Maddox looked at each other with weird faces. Okay, Maddox said, and they both sat on the ground. I sat down across from them, making sure I kept my back tall. I need to tell you something that happened, I told her. What's going on, Bud? She asked with a confused voice. When you went to help the grown UPS, Vlad tried to get us back to the pack house, but there was I trailed off, trying to remember the word. Compilation. Complication. Maddox asked. Yeah, that one, I said. A vampire came to get us. Mr. Vlad gave me baby Asley and told us to run to safety. He stayed behind to fight the vampire. I reached forward and grabbed Missy's hand. I am sorry, but he didn't get away from the vampire. Missy's eyes looked like they were going to start crying. Maddox put his arm around her as she made a sniffle sound. Thank you for telling me, little Elle, she whispered. There is one more thing, I said. He asked me to tell you something. He said to tell you that he did it for you, and he loved you. Missy sucked in a breath and bit down on her lip. I leaned forward to give her a hug. I didn't know if that was what the alpha does, but Mom gives us hugs to make us less sad. Missy hugged me back tightly. I'm glad you're okay, Missy said when I let her go. Why don't you go make sure the other kids are all taken care of? Alphas take care of their packs. I nodded my head and went back over to Delilah, but my heart was sad when I heard Missy start crying. Chapter 76. Axel. Alpha had a grim look on his face as he called everyone to attention. I know it has been a long and scary night for us all, so I will keep this brief. Warwick is dead. His vampires and the ones he allied himself with have all been eliminated. Our pack is once again safe, he announced. Sighs and murmurs of relief rolled through the crowd. Now, we must put our lives back together. Warriors have begun searching the pack land for our missing pack members and recovering those we have lost. Now that the fight is over, it is time for us to come together and prove our strength. Soon, we were all doing just that. Warriors were divided into patrols to help in various parts of the pack. We collected bodies, helped clear damaged buildings, and even reunited a few pups with their parents. Repairs to damaged homes and buildings began immediately. Rumors floated around that Aelia was the cause of the pink moon and the reason why everyone's physical injuries were healed. Sadly, there were injuries that couldn't be healed. A few pack members were taken to the clinic with Dr. Ronald to do what he could for their vampire bites. I caught Missy and Maddox headed that way. I heard through the grapevine that one of their friends was bitten. By the time the pink moon descended into the horizon, and the sun began to rise, we collected a total of 20 lost wolves. Despite the victory, it laid the tone for a somber day in Blood Eclipse. My team and I worked diligently until lunch, helping wherever we were needed. The one place we avoided was the former Alpha and Luna's house. Beta told everyone to leave it, and he would handle it personally. When I realized it was getting later in the afternoon, we all headed to the pack house to grab some lunch. I intended to stay as long as my pack needed help, but my mind kept wandering to Lemon. I was going to have to reschedule our date, which was disappointing. Luna and Miss Marcy had the kitchen running all day so pack members could come and go as they pleased and not worry about cooking in their possibly damaged homes. My team filed in, heading straight for the tables of food set up and well stocked. Everyone was quickly grabbing plates and stacking them, as many of us had not taken a break since everything began. I was grabbing a sandwich when Luna Aelia came over. "Hey, Axel," she greeted me. "Good afternoon, Luna," I said. "I didn't expect you to be here still," she said, furrowing her eyebrows. The town was spared any vampire interference. "We stayed to help take care of the pack," I told her. She gave me a warm smile. "I got a call a little while ago. It seems my manager has been very worried about her new boyfriend," Luna said, raising an eyebrow at me. "Oh," I said quickly. "I'm sorry, I had no idea she would call you. My phone died, and we were so busy." Luna laughed. "It's okay, Axel. I think it's great. Lemon is wonderful, and I think you two will be very happy. Maybe after lunch, your team can head home. You guys need a break too." I smiled. "Thanks, Luna," I said. "Just one thing." "Anything," she said, tilting her head. "Can you tell my team?" I raced through the trees, my paws pounding the earth as I pushed my tired body forward. There was still a chance I could make it in time to shower and get to Lemon for our date. I was getting close to my house when I linked one of the warriors I tasked with keeping an eye on her and the inn. "She's at your house," he told me. "What? You mean she is at home, like her home?" I clarified. "No, she went to your house last night." "Maybe don't hide your key in a flower pot with a dead plant in it," he replied. "Why was Lemon at my house?" I charged ahead, even more eager to get back to her. I came out of the trees behind my house and shifted. I grabbed a pair of shorts from the basket by the back door and went straight in. "Lemon!" I called, coming through the kitchen. "Axel!" I heard her voice call from the living room. I breezed right into the living room. Lemon was standing from the couch. The blanket from my bed was discarded on the floor in front of her. She was wearing the same clothes as yesterday, but they were a little disheveled. "Lemon, what are you doing here?" I asked. She looked at me with doe eyes. "I thought I would wait here for you so I would know when you were back and safe," she said softly. I strode across the room to pull her into my arms. I kissed the top of her head as her arms came around my waist. "I'm glad you're okay," she said, her shoulders relaxing against me. "Of course I am okay," I told her. She pulled back to look at me. "I couldn't let you fall without someone to catch you. Plus, we have a date tonight." Her eyes searched mine for something. Then she reached up and grabbed my face, pulling me down to her. I threaded my fingers into her messy black hair and kissed her like my life depended on it. She pulled away from me all too soon, panting slightly. "Axel," she said. "Yes," I answered. "Two things. First, you smell bad. Usually you smell good, but it's like you rolled around in something rotten," she said, making a cute grossed out face. I laughed as she continued. "Why don't you shower, and we can stay in tonight?" I nodded my head. I liked the sound of that. "Only if we reschedule for tomorrow." "And the second thing?" I asked. She looked around my house and frowned. "Maybe you should move in with me," she said, quieter now. My mouth fell open in astonishment. "What?" I asked her. "Your house is so bare and lonely. We spend so much of our time together anyway, and we eat almost every meal together. Plus, when you had to leave to do wolf stuff, you would be coming back to me so I would know you were safe." "Yes," I said, cutting off her well-thought-out explanation. "Yes, yes, yes." Her smile creased her eyes. "Aelia." The kids were all dressed and waiting downstairs with Lily and Damien. It was a hard day all around, but I knew it weighed heavily on my mate. Over the last 2 days, he had been the picture of a perfect alpha by day, helping to orchestrate the rebuilding of his pack. As soon as we were alone, he was withdrawn and quiet. I went up to his office and knocked on the door softly before stepping inside. He sat at his desk with a glass of amber liquid in one hand and his mother's note in the other. His eyes stared at the writing on the page, but I knew he wasn't reading it. He didn't need to read it again. Jacob went to Lissa's home to get her after we returned to the pack house. He assumed she would be all healed after everyone in the pack experienced my magnified ability. He knew of the safe room in Robert's office, having helped Liam arrange the house for his parents years ago. But when he got inside, Lissa wasn't moving. Jacob had her body brought to the clinic directly and took the note from her hand to Liam. Liam was given the letter right before addressing everyone in our pack. I finally read the letter yesterday when Liam accidentally left it on our bed. In it, she apologized for her weakness. She told Liam she wanted to hang on for him and our children, but living without Robert was too painful. The fight hurt her enough that she knew she could close her eyes and move on. She just wanted to be by her mate's side again. She also apologized to Missy for breaking her promise and hoped Missy would never have to know the depth of pain she lived with. I was most surprised at the gift she left for Maddox. Liam swirled his drink and took a slow swig. "Liam," I said softly. His eyes moved slowly to me. They were bloodshot, and dark circles were rimming his eyes. "Liam, it's time to go." He nodded, silently throwing back the rest of his drink. He stood, folding the letter and placing it into the inside pocket of his all-black suit. He buttoned the front and came around the desk to offer me his hand. "She's with your father, now," I said softly. "Let's go give them a proper goodbye." He nodded again, and we headed out without any more words. Liam conducted a beautiful memorial service for the pack members killed in the attack, as well as his parents. I couldn't decide what the worst part was, though. Missy held onto her mate through the entire ceremony with silent tears running down her cheeks. Not only had her grandmother died but also one of her friends. Leo cried inconsolably in my arms for about half of it while Junior stood next to me, holding my hand but with a stony expression. All I could feel from Liam was numbness. He barely processed his father's death and grieved him before losing his mother as well. Lissa and I may not have had a great start, but we grew fond of each other. Lily and I arranged for a small reception afterward on the packhouse lawn. People came, ate some food, and talked amongst themselves before heading back to their homes to be with their families. Our pack needed time to heal emotionally. After the funeral, Quinn and Michael departed, taking the witch they saved with them. Although it was not helpful to us after Warwick's death, she did shed some light on what he was trying to accomplish. Warwick had been experimenting on vampires by controlling what type of blood they were fed. The wolves he kidnapped in the first conflict were an attempt to see if he could create a hybrid by feeding only werewolf blood to one of his kin. When that didn't work, and we rescued our pack members, he switched to witch blood. Sadly, the witch that was saved wasn't the first that Warwick had used. After the funeral, Liam went to his office once more. I knew he needed space, so I tried to give it to him. Once the reception was over, Lily took the kids so I could take care of one more thing. Azrin and I headed out to town to make one more visit. We stopped at the florist before Azrin pulled into the very small cemetery on the edge of town and parked the car. When Liam told me when the attack on Warwick was planned to take place, I started making arrangements for Theodore. I didn't want him to be alone when it happened, but he insisted it wasn't necessary for him to have company. He was grateful to me for calling to inform him. We stopped in front of a very simple, pale grey headstone. I smiled sadly as I set the flowers down on the freshly turned earth. Azrin kept a distance, giving me some privacy. "Thank you, friend," I whispered. "I might not have my mate or children without all your help. I wish we could have found a way to save you. I will always be grateful for your help." I rubbed the top of the stone as I took a shuddering breath. After a few more minutes, I turned to Azrin, nodding to tell him we could go. We sat in comfortable silence on the way back. I hoped this was the last person I would have to say goodbye to for a long while. Liam never came to bed that night. In the morning, I woke up to Asley's soft cries over the monitor. Once she was in a clean diaper and sucking contentedly on a bottle, we went to Liam's office. His suit jacket and tie from the previous day were slung over the back of the couch. His shirt was wrinkly, and the first couple of buttons were undone. "Liam," I said, coming inside. "Oh, Aelia, baby, I'm sorry." "What time is it?" he asked, looking around. "Have you been in here all night?" I asked. Looking at his desk, there were endless reports scattered everywhere. The warriors must have started submitting everything from the battle for there to be this much. "Yeah," he sighed. I adjusted Asley in my arms and came around his desk. He looked up at me, his face was sad and tired. "Are you reading the reports?" I asked him. He just nodded slowly. "Liam, you couldn't have saved her. You couldn't have saved Austin or any of the other wolves that died. But what you did do is stop any more from dying. He nodded, his gaze absent. I knew he heard but just couldn't accept what I was saying. His eyes fell on Aelia in my arms. He reached out, and I gently placed her in his waiting hands. His face softened a little as he looked down at her. Why don't you take her back to our room and relax? I offered. I will clean these up and organize them. Okay, he agreed. He stood, and I guided him to the door. Liam slowly made his way down the hall with his daughter in his arms. I sighed as I turned around. Sitting at his desk, I got to work. A couple of hours later, I looked up to see Damien leaning against the door frame. Hey, he said. Hey, I replied. Where might the alpha be? He asked. I looked at the clock, completely unaware that so much time had passed. Hopefully asleep, I said. I closed the folder I was reading and set it on its appropriate pile. Almost everything was read and filed, all the things requiring Liam's attention were set aside for him. Has he picked someone yet? Damien asked. I shook my head. He should appoint Felix, Damien offered. I guess that is if he can relent on your 24/7 surveillance. I laughed lightly. I may be taking slight advantage of his current distraction, I told him. Damien nodded. Felix will make a good delta. I am sure Azran can handle being your only guard for a while, he said. I'll talk to him, I told Damien. I think the pack might heal better if we get someone appointed. Lily is making Sundays downstairs with the kids. They all want to sleep over together again tonight, Damien told me. All right, I said. I'm sure they feel safest in their little group. Damien nodded. Have we checked on Abigail? Jacob went over. She seems all right, he said. I'll go see her tomorrow, I told him. Damien stood up straight. I should go check on him. Damien nodded before taking his leave. I went upstairs to our room, hoping Liam was there. When I opened the door, my heart warmed. Liam lay on the bed, fast asleep. Aelia laid a foot away from him but completely sprawled out and sleeping as well. I grabbed one of her blankets and came over to the bed to cover her up. Her shiny ginger curls were messy on her head. Her little fists opened and closed in her sleep. Liam looked older. This war had taken its toll on our pack and its alpha. I wanted to wake him so I could hold him tightly and tell him how much I loved him, but I thought better of it. He needed to sleep, and I would be here when he woke. He was my alpha, and it was my job to take care of him so he could continue taking care of our pack. Chapter 77. Junior, are you sure about this, Elle? Delilah asked me. I nodded my head. I have to, Lila. I will never be ready to protect everyone if I don't start learning how to do it. I told her. She sat on my bed while I combed my hair in the mirror that hung from my closet door. What if Uncle Liam says no? She asked. We're kids still. Dad started training when he was 5. Grandma and Mom didn't know I heard their conversation. That means that I am behind. If I want to be a great black for Alpha, then I need to start learning now. I told her. Okay, she said, hopping off the bed. If he says no, I guess we'll just figure it out together. I turned to my best friend. Thanks, Lila, I told her. Good luck, she said. She left me in my room. I turned back to the mirror and took a deep breath. I could make Dad understand. Now that Grandma, Grandpa, and Mr. Austen were gone, there were less people to protect us. Dad needed someone to help keep our people safe, and I wanted to be the one to help him. I marched out of my room and straight down to his office. I passed Mom on the way, but I couldn't stop to talk to her. I had a mission to complete. I knocked on the door, and I heard Dad say, "Come in." I pushed the heavy door open and walked right up to his desk. "Hey, bud, what's going on?" he asked. "Dad, I mean Alpha, we need to talk," I said. "Oh," he said back. His eyebrow raised on one side. "After recent events, I think it is permanent that my Alpha training begin immediately," I said. I stuck my chin out like the guys in the movies did. Dad laughed a little. "It's pertinent, is it?" "Yes," I told him. "You started when you were 5, and I am older than that. Grandma said that I am the little Alpha. There is only one Alpha in our pack, so it has to be you to teach me what to do." Dad was smiling, and I couldn't tell if he was taking me seriously or not. He stood up and walked around his desk. He leaned against it, crossing his arms. "And what will you do if I say that you are still too young?" "Delilah and I will figure it out on our own," I told him. Now both his eyebrows went up. He let out his deep laugh. "You know what the first lesson in being an Alpha is?" he asked. "No," I said. "An Alpha must always fight for what he thinks is right, but he must also accept that he might be wrong," Dad said. "Wait," I said. "So am I right or wrong?" Dad laughed some more. "You came in here ready to defend what you think is the right thing to do. You thought about why it was right and weren't afraid to defend yourself. If you feel that training to become Alpha is the right thing to do, then I will accept that I was wrong." "You will?" I asked, not believing him. He nodded. "I wanted to protect you for a little longer. Your mother and I wanted to let you be a kid for as long as we could because being Alpha is hard. If you think that you are ready to start learning, I will admit that I was wrong. So do you still think you are ready?" "Yes," I said, jumping up excitedly. I stopped and controlled myself again. Alphas were cool and calm. "Yes," I said again calmly. Dad had a big smile on my face. "All right, Wednesdays after school for 1 hour. Alpha training, me and you." "I have another thing," I told him. "You came in here more prepared than I thought," Dad said. "I want Delilah to train with us," I told him. "She is going to be my beta, and the beta helps if the Alpha is busy, so it only makes sense that she learns with me." "I'll talk to Uncle Damien about it," he said. "That is fair," I said, nodding. "Thank you for meeting with me." "Thank you for coming," Dad laughed. I turned and walked slowly out of the room. When I got into the hallway, I ran as fast as I could to find Lila. She was going to be so excited. "Maddox." Missy squeezed my hand as we pulled up the driveway. The Serenity Waters pack house was far more quaint than the Blood Eclipse one. The entire pack seemed to be built around a sizable lake that was fed by a river. "Are you sure you're okay?" she asked as I put the car in park. "Yeah, I need to do this," I told her. It took me a long time after the aftermath of the attack on Blood Eclipse, but I finally accepted that I needed to talk to Langston. It was our last day before school started again, and I knew if I waited any longer, I wouldn't have the nerve. We climbed out of the car, and someone our age came out the front door. "Welcome, you must be Maddox and Missy," he said. "Alpha has told me a lot about you." I shook his hand. "Hi," I said. "Sorry, I should introduce myself. I am the beta's nephew, Ronan," he told us. "It's nice to meet you," Missy said. "Alpha is waiting for you," he said. He would have come outside, but we are still working on making the pack house a little more accessible for him. My stomach felt heavy as we followed Ronan inside their pack house. The inside was surprisingly large. I hadn't expected it based on the outside of the pack house. When we stepped into Langston's office, we were greeted by Emma squealing. "Oh Missy, you get prettier every day." Missy let go of my hand to hug Emma. When they were done, she held my mate at arm's length smiling. "Having a mate looks good on you, dear," she said fondly. "Thanks," she smiled. "Why don't we go down to the kitchen and find some snacks?" Emma said. "We can leave our mates to talk." Missy nodded. "Ronan, sweetheart, would you mind going to help your uncle?" Ronan nodded his head and left the office. Emma pulled Missy along with her and closed the door. I was left alone with Langston. He sat behind his desk, but he wasn't in a regular chair, he sat in a wheelchair. "Maddox, glad to see you looking so good after the attack," Langston said. Reflexively, I rolled my shoulder. I still had a scar from where my arm reattached, and it felt stiff sometimes, but otherwise, you would never know I lost a limb. "Luna Aelia really came through for our whole pack," I said. "She is quite amazing," Langston nodded. "Why don't you come have a seat?" I stepped forward to one of the cozy chairs across the desk from him. I sat down gingerly, more nervous now that I was actually in front of him. "Liam said you had something you wanted to talk to me about," Langston said. I nodded my head, but I couldn't meet his eyes. "Alpha Langston. No need for formalities after our little adventure," he laughed. "Langston," I corrected. "I cannot tell you how sorry I am. I should never have left you to fight that sire on your own." "If I would have just stayed, we may both be dead," Langston interrupted me. I looked up at him, confused. "Son, you have nothing to apologize for." I knew that we were both facing an impossible situation when that sire arrived. "I know I am no spring chicken while you are in your prime. Even so, more training wouldn't hurt you. Telling you to leave was a calculated move to give us the best possible outcome we could hope for. I did it, though," I said. "I killed Big Rave. If I had stayed, then you wouldn't have had to get hurt and—" "You killed the sire after seeing what he had done to me," Langston said. "You went into a blind rage, and your instinct took completely over. I don't believe that would have happened if you had remained with me for the entire fight." "I don't understand," I said. "Maddox, when you realized that my spine was snapped, your entire demeanor changed. Without reading your mind or seeing your thoughts, I can only assume that it shifted something inside you. You were possessed with revenge and ending that vampire. You have a lot of power and strength inside of you that seemed to break from its cage at that moment. Not many ever experience something so high stakes, so they don't unlock their potential in the same way." "It doesn't feel like that," I muttered. "I am sure it doesn't," he smiled. "I have been an alpha for a very long time. I have seen many strong warriors and trained with many stronger alphas. You are letting your guilt hold you back. If you cannot forgive yourself for something I do not hold against you, it will consume you. If you can let it go, I promise, you will be an incredible wolf, warrior, and man." I met his eyes and realized he was giving me a thoughtful look. Big Rave had a destined, like a mate. I killed her when she came after Missy. Liam sent me a copy of the report. "It seems like you have the perfect partner to support you," he smiled. Then, the girls walked in, ending our conversation. Emma carried a tray of food while Missy had drinks in her hands. "How are we doing?" Emma asked. "Great," Langston said. Emma came around his desk, setting the tray down on it before sitting in his lap. She kissed his cheek affectionately. I was just about to ask young Maddox what his plans were for after graduation. I felt a lot lighter when we returned home that evening. Langston assured me he had a plan to step down and was putting it in motion slowly. Emma told Missy that she was just grateful to have Langston alive, knowing that his extended tenure as Alpha put him in more and more danger all the time. When school resumed the next day, it was weird. Sol was still pretty quiet and far less smiley, but we were all trying to give her the time she needed to grieve her twin. Emmett was quieter, but at least there wasn't a second enormous gap left in our group. The weirdest part was that all of a sudden, people were being friendly to Missy and I. There were no more whispers or giggles, no more accusing looks and eye rolls. When we got to lunch, I was expecting the other shoe to drop. I just felt like we were missing something. Why is everyone so nice all of a sudden? Missy asked, looking around. It's the stories, Julie said like it was obvious. What stories? I asked. You guys don't know? Julie asked incredulously. Know what? Missy asked. Spit it out, I told her. She rolled her eyes. There are all kinds of stories floating around about you two fighting all the vampires, she said. She gave Emmett a pointed look. I think someone was bragging a little too loudly in the clinic about how badass his best friends are and the vamps we took down. Wait, so they know what happened? Missy asked. Well, some version of it. I heard one girl talking about you cornering one and biting off each its limb before burning it alive, so clearly, things have been dramatized, she said. Wow, I said. I think the main thing here is they all don't think we're misfits anymore. I think these stories have earned us some respect and maybe even a little of a badass rep, she smiled. Emmett scoffed. You know what? If it means I don't have any more drinks poured on me, I'll take it, Missy said, shrugging. She dug into her lunch, and soon the conversation shifted back to school and what was to come for all of us. It felt normal, and I decided, I liked normal. Damien. Lily and Aelia were in the kitchen baking cookies. It seemed like since the attack was stopped, Aelia has been doing everything in her power to bring normalcy and peace to everyone. She was watching the kids like a hawk, making sure they weren't struggling too hard with the loss. She was visiting the mates of lost pack members, she was baking and feeding everyone. She did her best to keep an eye on Liam, but he had to work through some of this on his own. Slowly he was coming back around. I came to the conclusion that she was able to heal everyone because of the harvest moon. There was no other explanation for it. Her pink, nurturing aura remained in the sky until the sun had fully risen the next day. Yesterday, Delilah banged her knee pretty hard while the kids were playing. Aelia rushed in to help, but I could see it made her tired. She didn't seem to want to talk about it, but she looked disappointed that her power had its consequences once again. Brownie, a voice asked. I snapped out of my trance to realize Aelia was standing right in front of me, holding up a napkin. Thanks, I said, taking it from her. Everything all right? She asked. Yeah, I told her. We just got Felix settled into Austin's office. I am going to take his things to Abigail in a minute. She nodded. No matter how strong she was, no one could bring back the dead. I'm sorry I couldn't reconnect your wolf, she said, looking down. I really hoped. It's okay, I told her. She looked up at me with doubt. I think it will all work out in the end. I have Lily to help keep Cage grounded, and now I can fight without him. Still, it must be awful having your other half ripped away from you, she said. I wish I could help Emmett and the others that were bitten too. I could guess that it must be pretty awful never to have the chance to be with your wolf, I told her. Her eyes softened. I can be grateful that I had Cage with me all these years. He isn't gone, just not with me. Maybe we will find an answer, maybe we won't. Quinn called, she changed the subject. Yet, I said. She and Michael will be coming back next week. She wanted to make sure you were up for some intense training. She wants a go at you with your axes, she laughed. I'm not sure that is a good idea, I said, thinking back to accidentally dismembering Maddox. Yet, for you, Lily laughed, joining us. You don't think I can handle the blue-haired hobbit? I said. Both the girls looked at each other and laughed. Guess we have a show to watch, Lily said, smiling radiantly. Chapter 78. Aelia. I stood in the bathroom, pulling a comb through my long hair. Today had been a really good day. Amy called to gossip about Lemon and Axel, then Lemon immediately called to gush about her date with Axel and how he was moving into her house. It was adorable to hear her talk about him so lovingly. I knew it wasn't fast for him with the way wolves usually fell for each other, but I hoped it wouldn't be too fast for her. Missy and Maddox surprised us after school by coming to the pack house to announce a sleepover at her house. Lily quickly agreed, and Liam seemed happy with the idea too, so I agreed as well. I laughed out loud when Leo asked her if Pretty Miss Soul was coming to spend the night too because he wanted to call dibs on putting his sleeping bag next to hers. After he trained with Damien this morning, Liam finally seemed to be back to normal. It was just in time with Quinn and Michael arriving the next day. I heard the bedroom door open and smelled the mossy forest scent float into the bathroom. There you are, little Luna, Liam smiled, coming behind me. His arms came around my waist, and his head came down to rest on my shoulder. I didn't know you were looking for me, my alpha, I smiled back. I am always looking for you, he whispered. His kisses stopped when he got close to his mark, and he stood back up with a sad look. Don't do that, I told him. Do what? He said, still frowning. I turned in his arms. Don't look at it like that, I begged. His fingers came up to trace the mark. It still stung when touched but only lightly. I hate it, he said. I know, I told him. But we stopped him. Together. You and I ended Warwick and the war. We survived. He sighed. I know, Liam, look at it as a reminder of what we overcame. Look at it as a symbol of what we can do, that we are stronger than any enemy, I whispered. His eyes lingered on it for another moment before coming up to mine. You're right, he said, leaning his forehead against mine. It's a reminder of just how strong and resilient you are. A reminder of the fearless, beautiful woman that risks everything to protect her loved ones. I smiled at his words. If I am so strong and fearless, then maybe we could talk about me not having a bodyguard all the time, I said, my voice rising. Liam laughed, throwing his head back. I believe I said that would happen when I had Warwick's head on a burning pike. The last time I checked, there was no burning vampire skull on my pack house lawn. He got put in a hole to burn and bury. I pouted. That isn't fair. Liam looked at me with a playful gaze. Fine, but I am not relenting completely. No bodyguard, I raised up on my tiptoes in excitement. Around the pack house. We have visitors, bodyguard. You leave the territory, bodyguard. Deal. I nodded my head excitedly. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Liam laughed again. I jumped up, catching him off guard as I wrapped my arms around his neck and brought my legs around his waist. He caught me before I could fall off of him. I didn't know you would be this excited. I know Felix is Delta now, and that leaves Azran, but you're making me feel a little bad here. No, it's not them. They are both great. I just never thought it would actually happen, I smiled. If it makes you this happy, then I can learn to live with it, he said. I pressed my lips to his, kissing him enthusiastically. A small growl sounded in his chest. You know what is in 3 months and 10 days? I asked. 3 months and 10 days, he asked back in confusion. Our anniversary, I said happily. How could I forget? He laughed. You know what is happening a lot sooner than that. What? I asked. He jutted his hips forward a bit, and I could feel his erection below me. My eyes widened. I'm taking my mate to bed, he smiled. I crashed my lips to his, and the rest was history. Epilogue. Missy, just hold still. Soul scolded. This is taking way too long, I told her. Then cut your hair, she argued. Maybe I will. I pouted. No, you won't. Maddox called from the other room. Soul laughed. Yet, he won't have anything to grab, she giggled. Would you stop? I yelled. Soul just walked into the house the other day when Maddox and I were having fun on the couch. She has not stopped relentlessly teasing me since. She hasn't found her mate yet, but it's only been about a month since her birthday. Ally's birthday fell on our graduation, so we all were running bets on if hers was Emmett or not. Emmett was meeting us at graduation, and Soul, Julie, and Ally were getting ready at my house. Julie and Ally were in the bathroom doing their makeup while Soul attacked my hair with a curling iron. She arrived in rollers this morning so she could tackle my hair first. You guys have less than an hour until we have to leave, Maddox called. We know. Soul called back. All right there, everything is curled. Let me pull my rollers out, then I will come back to style it. She unplugged the curling iron and hurried from the room. I rolled my eyes as I stood and stretched. My hair was getting long, I noticed. Maybe it was time for a change, we were graduating after all. It was time for adulthood. I went to the closet and grabbed my dress from the hook on the door. All the girls were told to wear white dresses under our yellow gowns, the boys were told to wear black under theirs. I got Maddox a white tie to go with his. I carefully pulled my dress on, taking extra care not to mess up any of my hair. I moved over to the mirror and started putting on some makeup. Soul came rushing back in when I was almost done. Okay, sit, she said. She looked beautiful with a bouncy wave now in her hair. Her white dress was similar to mine, but it had a little black brooch in the shape of a heart on it. We all had one for Sulian. She yanked and pulled, pinned, and sprayed until my hair was braided and twisted back from my face. It was brought together lower on my head to accommodate my cap. You're really good at this, I told her. I know, she smiled. He would have wanted you to go, I told her. She bit her lip. Every time this discussion was brought up, she looked like she wanted to cry. Soul decided she wanted to become a doctor after everything because Sulian intended to. But we knew she didn't want to. She wanted to go to cosmetology school. She shook her head. Not today, she whispered. All right, I told her. I stood and moved away from the mirrors so she could finish putting the final touches on her own hair and makeup. Hey, Maddox said from the doorway. I turned to see my dashing mate looking downright mouth-watering. You girls almost ready? Emmett said he can leave whenever. I think I am about ready. Did you see where I left my shoes? I asked. His hand appeared, holding up my heels. You're the best. I went to grab them from him, but he pulled them away, shaking his head. I should be compensated, I think, he smiled. I rolled my eyes but kissed him anyway. When we parted, he handed me my shoes. I will wait downstairs, he said, leaving us again. Julie and Allie came in looking perfect. I can't believe we are graduating, Julie said. Sol joined us, happy with her reflection now. Feels like we had to fight to get here, Sol said. We all wrapped our arms around each other, pulling together in a group hug. We are survivors, I smiled. And no matter where any of us end up, we'll always have each other. Everyone nodded. Okay, you are going to make me cry, and I don't want to ruin my makeup, Julie laughed. Let's go figure out if Allie has a mate. Okay, you are going to make me cry, and I don't want to ruin my makeup, Julie laughed. Let's go figure out if Allie has a mate. Maddox. When we got to the school for the graduation ceremony, I texted Emmett to see where he was at. She was quiet, but I could tell Allie was nervous. She told Missy that ever since the attack, she just felt drawn to Emmett, and she couldn't explain it. We stood outside the front doors, waiting for him to arrive. A few minutes later, Allie stiffened, and we all stopped our conversation. She turned around, and Emmett was standing at the bottom of the stairs. He held a small bunch of flowers in his hand, but his mouth was agape as he stared at her. Mate, Allie said after a drawn moment. He rushed up the stairs and picked her up, swinging her around. We all burst out in a round of cheers. This was the best way to start our graduation ceremony. Alpha conducted our graduation ceremony and even took a minute to pay tribute to the couple of wolves that didn't make it to graduation with us. During it, I saw a tear leaving Sol's eye. Afterward, we all headed to the pack house. Luna was throwing us all a combined graduation party. First, we all had to endure the endless torment of 1,000 photos. Even if they were Alpha and Luna, Liam and Aelia really loved their kids, and today, they were just crazy proud parents. Missy took a bunch of pictures with Alpha and Luna last, so we all went to talk with our other classmates. Allie and Emmett disappeared, and none of us knew if we would even see them at the party. When she was done, Missy came bounding over to me. I opened my arms, and she sped up, jumping right into them with a laugh. All done, she said happily. Luna looks very happy today, I told her. She is, Missy agreed. She never told me why, but she didn't get to graduate. She's over the moon that you and I finished like we told her. Good, I told her. I like making my future mother-in-law happy. What? She laughed. I set Missy down on her feet and pulled the box I had been holding onto for weeks out of my pocket. I said, I like making my future mother-in-law happy. At least, I am hoping you'll let me make that happen, I smiled. I opened the box, and Missy looked down with a gasp. Maddox, she started. Missy, I never thought I would find you. I came dangerously close to losing you, and I know I will never live without you. So marry me and make me the happiest man on the planet, I said. Yes, she smiled. Yes, yes, 1,000 times, forever yes. I pulled the ring from the box and slid it onto her finger. Her eyes misted when she realized whose ring it was. Our bond was nothing but joy on both sides. She jumped again, landing hard against me as she wrapped her arms around my neck and kissed me. I squeezed her to me tightly, never wanting this moment to end. When we arrived at the party, Alpha saw his mother's ring on her finger. His look was one of appreciation and acceptance. I was happy that Missy would have a symbol of my love and her grandparents' love and acceptance all in one item. There were a lot of people at the pack house for the party, and everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves. Alpha Michael and Luna Quinn came as well as Alpha Langston and Luna Emma. Being the Alpha's daughter and the star of the party, Missy had many people coming to talk to her. 2 hours in, and we hadn't been able to sit down and eat, so I decided to pull her away. Little Elle and Delilah were arguing about something when we got to the table with our plates. Lucas was playing with Isley in her chair, and Leo was sitting in Sol's lap, telling her about his action figures. We had barely taken a bite of our food when Alpha, Luna, Langston, and Emma came over. "There you guys are," Luna said happily. "Having a good time?" "The best," Missy smiled up at her mom. "Thank you for throwing the party for all of us." "You don't have to thank us, sweetheart," Luna said warmly. Missy, Maddox, Alpha Langston, and Luna Emma were wondering if they could have a word with you, Alpha said. "Sure," Missy said, looking at me. I looked down sadly at my uneaten cheeseburger before nodding. Missy pulled me up with her, and we stepped away from the table with Langston and Emma. "Congratulations, you two," Emma started. "Thank you," Missy said. "I know you two have some plans already, but Liam said you haven't set anything in stone," Langston said. "Well, not really yet," Missy said. I still wanted to continue being a warrior for the pack, but Missy was still debating exactly what she wanted to do. We both agreed that we wanted to wait to have pups for a while. "Well, I have thought a lot about this," Langston said. "And I didn't need to think about it at all," Emma added. Langston shook his head. "Maddox, what would you think about becoming the next Alpha of Serenity Waters?" he asked. I thought my eyes were going to bulge from my head. What?" I stammered. "You're a smart young man and clearly strong and capable. You saved my life, and you have a good head on your shoulders. I think your potential is wasted as just a warrior, and I am in need of someone with a lot of potential," he explained. "Missy, we have adored you since we met you. You have a warm heart, and you will make a superb Luna. You have a great role model for the job, too," Emma smiled. Missy looked up at me, just as lost for words. "What do you think?" she asked. "I don't know. I never dreamed of being an alpha," I told her. She reached down and intertwined our fingers. "I'll do whatever you want. This is your decision," she told me. I looked back at Langston, who had a calm smile on his face. Could I do it? Could I really become alpha? What if I failed? "You wouldn't have to start tomorrow, but I would like to train you soon. Most alphas have years to train, and well, I would like to retire," Langston said. "But I am not an alpha by blood," I said. "No, but you are one in your heart," he told me. I looked back at Missy, who just nodded. "Okay," I said, not taking my eyes off of my mate. "I'll be your next alpha." Missy smiled brilliantly at me. The end.